My parents helped my brother buy a house and told me to rent somewhere, so I used my savings to buy my first property, then kept buying more. When he asked about my house, I said, "Which one?" The thing about being the forgettable child is that people forget you are in the room. I was sitting at my parents' dining table eating leftover meatloaf that had the texture of regret when my mom handed my brother Kyle an envelope. Not a birthday card, not a graduation gift, just a random Tuesday in April. Kyle opened it. His eyes went wide. Holy crap. Are you serious? My dad grinned like he just won something. You are ready, son. Time to invest in your future. Kyle pulled out a check, held it up like Willy Wonka's golden ticket. $10,000. I kept chewing my meatloaf, which suddenly tasted like disappointment with a side of gravy. Mom said, practically glowing, "Our little homeowner." At least that is how the story usually goes. But in my house, my brother Leo did not get a $10,000 check. He got $25,000 in cold cash. And I was not just sitting there. I had just finished a brutal 14-hour bartending shift. My uniform still reeked of stale beer and bleach. My mother slid that thick envelope across the table to fund Leo's imaginary startup. That envelope bulged with the family tax they ruthlessly extorted directly from my tips. The very next morning, the extortion continued. Brenda stood in the kitchen hallway, hand outstretched, demanding my weekend cash tips. She called it my fair share for living under their roof. Upstairs, Leo was snoring, sleeping until noon on a Tuesday. I gripped the fabric of my apron, my knuckles turning white. Arthur walked in, sipping his black coffee, and coldly reminded me I was just a glorified waitress. He said my duty was to support my brother's genius. My jaw locked. I reached into my pocket and handed over a small, folded wad of decoy cash, a sacrificial offering to keep the peace. They took it without a thank you. They thought I was 29 and stagnant. They thought my silence was submission. They were wrong. I locked my bedroom door, sat in the dark, and opened my laptop. The glow of the screen illuminated my exhausted face. I logged into my high-yield, paperless online bank account. The balance stared back at me, a quiet victory built over years of surviving the service industry. $45,000. Every cent of it was legally taxed tip money, hoarded in secret, far away from their greedy hands. I bypassed the noise, the insults, and the burnt meatloaf. I navigated to a commercial real estate portal, found an unlisted, distressed duplex on the edge of town, and typed out a single, definitive email to the listing agent. I offered a full cash down payment. The secret empire quietly began. Time moves differently when you are building something real. Over the next few years, I managed contractors by day and slung drinks by night. I formed an anonymous limited liability company to shield my assets. I quietly acquired an $850,000 real estate portfolio. Nobody knew. At Sunday dinners, Leo would lean back in his chair, nursing a craft beer, bragging endlessly about his stunning new luxury rental. He would glance at my worn-out sneakers and smirk, telling me that maybe one day I could afford a place with a dishwasher. I would just smile, cut my food, and agree with him. I never corrected him. I never told him that I was the anonymous corporate landlord who owned his building. The secret held until a local business journal published a feature on under 30 real estate investors. My name leaked in the public tax records. Brenda did not call to apologize for years of financial abuse. She did not call to congratulate me. Her audacity was structural. She manipulated Leo's sleazy realtor friend into cross-referencing the LLC's recent purchases. She tracked down one of my newly acquired vacant properties. She bullied a naive young painter into opening the contractor lockbox by aggressively claiming she was the owner's mother inspecting the site. My phone rang. Brenda was standing inside my living room. Her voice echoed over the hardwood floors. She audaciously dictated how I needed to remodel the kitchen immediately because she had already promised the house to Leo. She told me to bring the keys by the weekend. "Family shares their blessings, Maya," she said, her tone dripping with entitlement. "He needs this more than you." I disconnected the call. The dial tone was my only answer. Desperation breeds reckless arrogance. Leo had just maxed out his credit cards, facing imminent bankruptcy, and my parents needed a lifeline. They retaliated for the dial tone. A process server showed up at my apartment and handed me a thick legal folder. Brenda and Arthur had hired a sleazy lawyer and filed a constructive trust lawsuit against me. They legally demanded 50% ownership of my entire real estate portfolio. To make their delusion look plausible to the courts, they fabricated a business plan on a napkin dated 5 years ago, paired with completely out of context text messages where I had written, "Here is the cash for the month." Leo texted me 10 minutes later, "Should have just given me the house, sis." I took the lawsuit straight to my lawyer. I dropped a heavy stack of meticulously date-stamped digital bank logs onto her mahogany desk. We read through their legal filing, and my lawyer began to smile. The trap was already set, and my parents had walked right into it. By legally claiming in a state court that they had invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into a joint business partnership, and by admitting to handing Leo $25,000, they made a fatal error. They had never filed partnership return forms. They had never filed federal gift tax forms. They had just admitted on the permanent public record to massive, multi-year federal tax evasion. We did not bother fighting their property lawsuit. My lawyer drafted a simple cover letter and forwarded their entire court filing directly to the Criminal Investigation Division of the Internal Revenue Service. Revenge is a dish best served in front of an audience. 2 weeks later, the extended family threw a massive backyard barbecue to celebrate Leo's supposed success. I arrived uninvited. Brenda was holding court near the patio, a glass of white wine in her hand, loudly playing the victim. She was lying to my aunts and uncles about how I stole their retirement investments to buy my properties. I stepped onto the grass. The smell of charcoal and grilled meat hung in the air. I remembered the years I spent scrubbing vomit off bar floors. I remembered the heavy, suffocating weight of their laughter, the decoy cash, the meatloaf. Today, I was the one holding the hammer. I gave a curt nod to the man in the polo shirt standing just behind me. The registered process server stepped past the cooler and walked straight up to Leo. He thrust a legal, unlawful detainer summons into Leo's chest. It was an eviction notice for 2 months of unpaid rent to his anonymous corporate landlord. The server aggressively snapped a time-stamped photo on his phone as legal proof of service, tipped his hat to me, and said, "You have been served. Enjoy the family reunion, folks." He briskly exited out the back gate, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. Leo dropped his paper plate, his face contorted in panic. I stepped forward and dropped the thick stack of federal tax audit notifications right onto the picnic table, directly in front of Brenda and Arthur. Arthur went completely pale, the color draining from his face like water from a cracked vase. Brenda's jaw dropped, her mouth opening and closing without a sound. The extended family gasped in absolute horror, the realization washing over the crowd that the golden child was being thrown onto the street, and the parents were staring down the barrel of federal prison. "Family shares their blessings," I said, my voice cutting through the humid air. "Have fun with the feds." I turned my back on them and walked away. The house of cards collapsed with brutal efficiency. To avoid federal indictments and prison time, Arthur and Brenda were forced to immediately withdraw their frivolous lawsuit against me. The legal fees alone crippled them. Then came the federal tax penalties, totaling $185,000. They drained their entire retirement savings to pay the government. The sheriff officially executed the eviction on Leo. His luxury car was repossessed 3 days later, and he was forced to move into his broke parents' damp basement. I sat on the wide wraparound porch of my 5th property. The morning air was crisp. I held a mug of black coffee, watching the neighborhood wake up. My phone was perfectly, beautifully silent. I had blocked their numbers permanently. The hardest part of this journey was not the 14-hour shifts. It was not the calloused hands, the sleep deprivation, or the stress of closing on that first distressed duplex. The hardest part was accepting a very dark, very quiet truth. The people who were supposed to protect me were the exact people I needed protection from. When you grow up in a toxic family system, you are conditioned to believe that love is transactional. Brenda and Arthur did not actually love Leo more than they loved me. They loved the idea of Leo. His fabricated success validated their fragile egos. They needed him to look like a winner so they could feel like winners. And they needed me to remain subjugated, small, and financially drained because my gritty reality challenged their delusion. I was never a daughter to them. I was a utility, a bank, a punching bag. It took me 29 years to understand the architecture of boundaries. It took me losing my illusions to build my reality. If you are watching this and my story echoes in your own life, I need you to internalize 3 absolute life rules. Rule number 1, silence is a strategy, not a weakness. Never announce your empire to people who only want to see you fail. When you are building something real, the loudest thing you can do is work in the dark. Let your results speak, and let their arrogant assumptions blind them. If I had bragged about my savings, they would have stolen it. By letting them think I was a failure, I bought myself the time and the cover to become untouchable. Rule number 2, blood does not mandate bankruptcy. You do not owe your sanity, your savings, or your future to people simply because you share a last name. Financial abuse disguised as family loyalty is still abuse. Guilt is the favorite weapon of the entitled. When they tell you that family shares their blessings, what they really mean is that they want to devour your hard work because they are too lazy to do their own. You are allowed to close the bank. You are allowed to say no. Rule number 3, the best revenge is structural, not emotional. Do not argue with narcissists. Do not scream. Do not cry. And do not try to make them understand your pain. They lack the empathy to care. Instead, fight them with boundaries, legal paper, and undeniable leverage. Let their own arrogance and desperation create the traps they inevitably fall into. The truth is relentless, and paper trails do not lie. A few months after the barbecue, a strange number left a voicemail on my phone. It was Brenda. Her voice was thin, shaking, trying to play the victim one last time. She talked about forgiveness. She talked about how a mother always loves her child. I listened to the entire message, staring out at the trees in my backyard. I did not feel anger. I did not feel sad. I just felt nothing. I tapped delete, erasing her voice from my life for good. My Sunday dinners look different now. I host them in my own dining room. There is no meatloaf. There is no tension hanging in the air. Just a chosen family of friends, mentors, and partners who treat me with the respect I earned. The air in my home is peaceful. So I have to ask you, who are you keeping comfortable at the expense of your own future? What family tax are you paying right now that you need to stop? Drop a comment below. Share your story. And share this with anyone who needs permission to finally walk away, stop paying the toll, and start building their own life. You are worth more than the crumbs they leave you.